Okay, we're all set. Welcome everyone to the May Board of Education meeting. It's wonderful to have so many faces out with us tonight. So many of you here tonight. So thank you for coming. Everyone's in attendance tonight, no absences, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can rise, please join us and say the pledge with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start with our first presentation tonight, I just wanted to mention that it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and I want all the teachers in the district to know how much the board appreciates your talent, your dedication, your caring that you show to our students every day, and we're blessed to have you as part of the Lake George team. So thank you so much to all of our teachers out there. And I would like to welcome Steve Preuss. He's going to introduce our world language student presentation.
Was it on? Oh. Hi there. So excited to be here. Thankfully, I'm not going to be speaking to you very long because what better way is there to open the door and share with you the impact of the trip we took in April, but to have several of our student participants relate their experience to you. So I can say I felt so fortunate to be able to chaperone the trip. I have my own experiences and thoughts, but I think you're going to be in for a treat to hear a couple of our students share with you what they got out of the trip and what it meant to them. They've made it easy on me. We're going to bring up Lily Montville and Lily Hunsinger to just share some of their thoughts and reflections and describe what the trip is all about.
We have some speaker notes, so we're going to be holding the laptop. Sorry about that.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lily Hunsinger, and this is Lily Montville, and we are two foreign language students who are here to talk to you about our experience over the trip, as well as thank the whole board for supporting us in this amazing experience. So first, we have some locations that we went to in France, and we got to see some of the most iconic pieces of architecture and art firsthand, from the Mona Lisa in the Louvre to the Sphinx and the sculptures from ancient Greece. The monument that probably left the biggest impact on me was Eiffel Tower. I was truly in awe the whole time that I was able to see the monument. Also, seeing the gardens and architecture in the castles was a highlight for me, as well as hearing the stories behind the royalty that lived there. So obviously, France is famed for its breads and pastries, and they definitely were the best I've had in my whole life. But France's food is also a lot more. There's a lot of blending of cultures in there, from Middle Eastern and Jewish, as well as like Mediterranean and Italian. A favorite outing of mine that we did was going to the open air markets. There was a lot of fresh food, and eating the cuisine there, you can feel that it's a lot fresher and like healthier for your body. So Paris is definitely known as one of the most activist cities. There's a lot of protests that go on in there. And when we were visiting, the protests against the raising of the retirement age were going on. And I took a picture of graffiti, and it basically says 60 years of age is not sufficient. We're not minions or slaves. So it was really interesting to see some of the protests going on there. And just in general, they have a lot of activism. There's a lot of like posters and murals like all over the city.
All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about Spain. So though Spain doesn't have those big giant landmarks like the Eiffel Tower. They do have some of the most amazing architecture I've ever seen in my life. The use of Gothic architecture there is incredible. As you can see in some of these photos, all these monuments and everything were obviously built by hand through many people many, many years ago. And it's incredible to see the detail that all this work that they put into everything. Some of the photos on the right are actually from churches and cathedrals we went to. And it's incredible just to see how much effort they put in lying upside down, painting a ceiling. I can't even paint standing up. So it's incredible to see that. And then we also got to see some amazing natural beauty like in Toledo, which is an amazing town. If you ever go to Spain, definitely stop by Toledo. They had an amazing sword shop, which was a highlight for all of us. About half of us came back with swords. So yeah. It was really great. And then we got to see so many plazas. Plazas are a giant part of Spain. They're everywhere. They have everything from shops to restaurants to bakeries, anything you can imagine. And it's lovely to see the communities that come in those little plazas. And it's great to be able to spend, it's like kind of parks we have here. We have Shepherd's Park, and you see people hanging out in the park on the weekends, and you get to see that in the plazas too with all that culture. Next, I have a little bit about the cuisine in Spain. Spanish cuisine is amazing. We actually got the chance to be able to cook for ourselves one night. We made paella, which is a traditional Spanish dish, and our instructor did not speak English, so it was quite an interesting thing, especially for French students. They did not know any Spanish either, so it was a little bit of a struggle at first, but we were able to make a delicious dinner with their help. And then we also, every night we had amazing 3-course meals. We had an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert, and we just got to taste so many different foods. And at lunchtime, many days we were allowed to walk around by ourselves and sample whatever kind of things we wanted within the parameters of where we were. And I actually had an experience with a waitress who didn't speak English, and I take Spanish in school, and I got to try out my Spanish, and I accidentally told her it was my birthday, so she so that was a little interesting, but it was a great experience to be able to learn about those new cultures. And then finally, just a little bit about the culture. Again, the plazas, this in the bottom right corner is Plaza Mayor, which means better, best kind of translation there. And it's an amazing plaza where they used to have bullfights and a bunch of also executions, but we're gonna go with bullfights because that's more exciting. And then on the left, we have, they have a character like Robin Hood for us, and we got to see that amazing culture and the differences there. Also in Spain, they don't have a tooth fairy, they have a tooth rat who comes and takes your teeth from under your pillow. So it's interesting to learn those different kinds of things that we never would learn about here in America. And we would just like to finally thank you all for your support on this trip. And it was an amazing trip for all of us. I speak on behalf of everybody who went, chaperones, students, and parents who helped make this possible. And thank you for giving us this hands-on opportunity. And we just had so much fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lily and Lily. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I just want to say great job presenting. I'm sure it's not easy standing up there in front of them and us, but nice job.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved hearing about, I'm kind of salivating thinking about all that really good food that you made and just smiling thinking about the wonderful experience that you had as global citizens. Thank you for representing Lake George as global citizens. Appreciate that. The next item we have up, I'm sorry who has to follow them, but the next item on the agenda is the Native American Imagery Update presentation with Mr. Frank Kukoza and Mr. John Luthman.
Thank you. We're going to welcome up a few more of our students here
Oh,
to help
good.
us with this presentation. Come on down. It's all right. So before we get going here, I'm going to have our students help introduce themselves. And these members of our students, as there is a slide that speaks to this, but they've been part of this process really since January. Yeah, mic's on. I think we should be good. as part of our student advisory committee. And they've played a really integral role learning alongside the district in regards to the work and efforts that we need to do in pertaining to the regulations for Native American imagery. So I'm just going to have each of them introduce themselves and what grade level they're in, and then we'll get started.
Hi, I'm back again. I'm Lily Montville, and I'm in 9th grade.
I'm Addison Reinhold, and I'm in 7th grade. Hello, I'm Anna Rakiki, and I'm in 11th grade.
All right, thank you so much. So we're going to jump right in. They're going to help us present a little bit to the board here. And I know the Board of Education has seen a number of presentations given by myself and Mr. Koza, really all the way from the fall where we started and to where we are now. So this first slide here is really just a representation of the timeline associated with this regulation. So we were notified on November 17th from the New York State Education Department that districts must end the use of Native American imagery. So there's a series of things. I'm not going to touch on them all, but really we started a process here of certainly learning, waiting for additional guidance, presentations to the board, presentations to our staff, information sent out to our community. And then really around January, December 12th, actually, the New York State Board of Regents reviewed the regulation. It went out for public comment, and we said, okay, well, things are moving along. We really want to hear from our students. We want to make sure our students are involved in this whole process. So we started meeting with them in January. We started with a presentation not only to the student council, but our student athletes, our varsity club. And out of that, we asked for volunteers to join us on this journey. And we had about 8 or 9 of our students, really from grades 7 through 12. 3 of our members are here tonight. And there's others that are going to help us present and help us with this process all the way through to the end. So we started that. We've had several different meetings. On February 28th, the public comment period ended, as I shared at our last meeting, in regards to the regulation. There was a couple tweaks to the regulation. We didn't expect major changes, and we didn't receive them, but there are a couple tweaks that we'll highlight in this presentation. And then we had a series of other advisory meetings. The Board of Regents officially adopted this on April 17th. So the Board of Regents really creates educational law, and it is where that is at right now. So now that it's been adopted, we really know what the district is charged with, and really we're here today to talk about that process and where we are now and the process moving forward. So just a quick update here. And again, so part of what they did when they had officially adopted that, they're adopting the regulation which prohibits the use of indigenous names, mascots, and logos by public schools. There was approximately 65 schools left in New York State that were still using Native American imagery. Lake George does fall into that category. The regulation, the update to that, the piece that we were waiting on, as we mentioned, was we weren't sure how the nickname Warriors would be impacted. And the update does include the language that says vestiges of prohibited team names, logos. And really what vestiges means is traces of, linkage, lineage to. And as you heard at one point in our presentation a couple months ago, for the history of Lake George, in 1952, we became the Warriors, and the Native American mascot was launched in that year. So they've always been tied. So what that means is that due to that, Warriors nickname and mascot fall under this regulation and do need to be retired. So in addition to that, I'll just comment that there was that advisory group that had worked at the members of indigenous tribes that were working with the state. They were receiving letters and information and questions from districts all over the state in impacting that. And they made it very clear that the same sort of sentiment, if they've been tied, they really are one and the same. There are districts out there that, for example, that have had Warriors or something else that have never had Native American imagery. They're not impacted by this. It's ones that have been tied in history. The other update that was something of note and certainly something important to our school, but also our community, the original proposal required that public school officers and employees, when located on school property or a school function, really prevented them from utilizing or promoting any indigenous name, logo, or mascot. Really what that means is it pertains to attire or somebody coming on and selling items, say we're having a sale or something like that. So that's really what the intention of. The change is the adopted regulation removed the word individuals. So it only applies now to school officers and school employees. So really, what does that mean? Mr. Koza, we've presented to the staff, and he does a great job always saying, well, Mr. Lutheran, what does that really mean? That means that our community members, our students, certainly we know in our community that's been really for 70 years of Warriors, there's wardrobes full of, warrior gear. And they're all entitled to wear that wherever they go. That's really what it shares. For school employees and school officials, we have to abide by the regulation, but for our students that are going to school or just, out in the community or attending an event, as long as they're, not part of that athletic team, they'd be required to wear their athletic jerseys. They can certainly wear, they're entitled to wear whatever attire that they have. So for our community members, certainly coming to an event or things of that nature, they can wear whatever they would like to wear, is what that indicates. Who's up?
So we are just a few representatives from the Student Advisory Committee. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about who is in the Student Advisory Committee, and then we're all going to discuss kind of what our job is. So in terms of staff, it's made up of Mr. Luthringer, Mr. Kokoza, Mr. Manny, and then Ms. Canali, who is in charge of student council, is kind of one of our teacher representatives. And then in terms of students, it's every student listed up here. So there's a few more than just us. And then we are representatives from student council. Some of us are part of captain's council, and then also varsity club.
Now, before starting this whole rebranding process, we wanted to set some goals for our committee. So for starters, we wanted to make sure that our committee members could develop a thorough understanding of Lake George school history, whether that being the history of the logo, the mascot, or the nickname. And we also wanted to gain a deeper understanding of the local history pertaining to Native American culture and Lake George local and school history. And we completed these goals by thoroughly looking through documents and old yearbooks. And the process was quite long, but it was very necessary and truly really interesting to see. Now, the goals in the blue are kind of our priority right now. And those goals include help defining and making suggestions on the 3 areas, including the logo, mascot, and nickname. Now, the committee members and my fellow peers that I've talked to are very excited to have a say in this whole rebranding process. So a lot of people are definitely looking forward to that. We're also aiming to be a liaison and ambassador between the school and the student body, and we will actually be presenting to them fairly soon. And we'd also like to communicate our plan with the school community groups, organizations, as we learn more and more about the specific obligations. And obviously, we are fulfilling part of that goal right now.
So in terms of the meetings that we've had so far, first, we started off with, in January, we had a big student council meeting, which if you don't know, we have all of our presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, and treasurers and reps come into a big meeting through all the grades, and we talk about issues that concern the whole school. So in that meeting, Mr. Kokoza came and kind of gave us the run through of what was going to happen. Even though we didn't have a ton of information from the state yet, this is when we began to form this committee. So we asked for volunteers, and the 3 of us volunteered and some others, and then we've been working from then on. In February, it was our first meeting with just the 8 or 9 of us. And then we talked about the charge of the committee, what we're doing, kind of what Anna just explained, and then a little bit about the history of the Lake George mascot, nickname, and logo, which Mr. Kokoza will share with you soon. And then in our March meeting, we reviewed some of the memos that we had. Though we didn't have all the information that we have now, we did have a basis of information going back to 2001, starting with those memos all the way up to today. And we kind of researched and decided what that meant for Lake George. And then we went on forward with that as we got new information.
So we had 2 meetings in April instead of April and May. So our first meeting in April, we talked about the perspectives of the Native Americans. So I wasn't really here for the whole thing, but we just talked about how we're gonna make it our new logo, please everyone. And then our second April meeting, we talked about the new regulation and how we're going to change our logo and our nickname in time for next year, and how we're going to make the community decide with us too. It's just not everyone is deciding, not just the board meeting members.
So, anything else, ladies, you'd like to throw into that? What a great job they did, and kind
Great
of.
job.
And we spanned from 7th grade all the way up to 12th grade in terms of representation from the student body. And I'll tell you that not only these 3 students, but the rest of the committee, they're not shy about offering their opinions and perspectives on things. We thought it would be beneficial to briefly go through the next few slides about the nicknames, the logo, and the mascot history. For the board, you've seen this. However, for the majority of the folks in the public this evening and perhaps online, this might be the first time that they're hearing this. So I will be as brief and concise as I can. Prior to 1926, before this building, the Lake George Central School District, the Lake George School, the Caldwell District was across the street where the current Duffy's Tavern approximately is located. And in our history and in our research, we found that actually the logo of the district was LG. And at that point, there was no known mascot. In 1926, after multiple referendums before this community to build a brand new school, it was decided to build a school right here on the Parrott Farm. In 1926, this building was constructed, the original structure. And at that point, the LG was still the logo, and it was decided that the nickname of the district for the athletic teams was the Lake George Lakers. There was no known mascot at that time, and the gymnasium was the 7th grade cluster, our current 7th grade cluster. We do have a picture of that original gymnasium in which center court had the LG center court. There's a picture that you're looking at right there. It says 1916-17. So that predates this building in which the LG letters were on uniforms. In the 1940s, for reasons unknown to the person conducting the research, that being me, the district decided to go with Lake George Georgians as a nickname, however, retaining the LG as the logo. And again, there was still no known mascot in the 40s. In 1951, much like what was occurring throughout New York State, the Lake George School District centralized. So what does that mean? In 1951, we went from being multiple 1 and 2 and 3 room schoolhouses throughout the community into one central location. And we pulled students from various municipalities, that being Fort Anne, the town of Queensbury, the town of Lake George, and a little sliver of Warrensburg. In 1951, because of that centralization, this building needed to be expanded, and a new gymnasium was built in the early 50s, which is now the current auditorium. That gymnasium was where all of the athletic contests occurred from 1952 until 1990, and our nickname switched from the Georgians to the Warriors. However, the LG logo continued to be used, and sometime in the 50s, a little flame was added to the top of the LG logo, along with the usage of the Lake logo. So you'll see that News and Views from the mid-60s on the top left corner of that picture is a Lake logo. And I said this at all of our presentations. It's too bad we didn't trademark that Lake logo, Mr. Luthringer, because the district could have some royalties from that. Well, there's a picture there of the flame on top of the LG. In 1959 and 1960, or thereabouts, the center court of the original, or the second gymnasium, which is our current auditorium, the center court, a painting was commissioned by a student who is well known in the area as a prolific artist, Chuck Hawley, who's now deceased. And his paintings are well known throughout this area and displayed throughout various places in not only Lake George Village, but in the Adirondack Park. He painted center court a Native American image, where it remained for the 60s, 70s, 80s, until the new gymnasium was constructed. 1968, the elementary school was built. The district was bulging at the seams and needed another building. However, interestingly enough, in 1968, when the elementary school was built, no warrior or Native American imagery was placed anywhere within the building. 1990, the new gymnasium was constructed, our current gymnasium. Interestingly enough, in 1990, when the new gymnasium was constructed, center court had that image, the interlocking LG, put on it. No, Mr. Kokoza did not one night erase the Native American image on center court. That has been there since that gymnasium was constructed in 1990. So at that point, the district decided to use the historical logo of LG for center court of the new gym, which is our current gym. The scoreboards also had LG as the logo, and they are still in use today, much to Mr. Manny's pleasure. In the 1990s, mid-90s, it was decided that the old Chuck Hawley painting that was on the gym floor, the second gym, would be displayed in the lobby of the new gymnasium, and the old gym was turned into the auditorium. In 2001, Commissioner Mills issued a memo to all districts in New York State in which he asked, and that is the key word, the commissioner at the time asked Board of Eds to end the use of Native American mascots. At that same time, the Lake George Central School District commissioned a stakeholding committee to review the usage of the logo, mascot, and nickname. And in some instances, from 2001 moving forward, the district, in some instances, moved away from the usage of Native American imagery on certain items. However, it was decided by that committee to retain the Native American mascot and the warrior nickname, despite the memo from the commissioner at the time. In 2010, with many things going on in New York State and across the nation, it was decided as a district that we would start the process of slowly moving away from the use of Native American imagery on anything that the district purchased. That included the website, letterhead, athletic uniforms, all the way back to 2010, the facilities, and the logo that we were using from 2010 moving forward was the interlocking LG or the LG. However, 2010 moving forward, we stopped using widely the Native American mascot. If you recall back in 2010 or thereabouts across the nation, many professional sport teams were moving away from the use of Native American imagery as well. 2017 to present day, the official organizations that are recognized by the district, the PTSO, the Alumni Association, and the Booster Club, all discontinued the use of the Native American logo, with the most recent being our Booster Club, and adopted LG as their organizational logos. In November of last year, our Board of Ed adopted a resolution declaring and designating the Native American head as a heritage image for the district. And then we had the memo this past fall, not asking, but mandating districts discontinue use. So just a very quick summary of everything I went through. Nicknames, you can see prior to 26, it was LG. A good chunk of time, we were the Lake George Lakers, then the Georgians, and from 51 forward, the Warriors. You'll see that picture is one of the older pictures of the building. The date is 1932 on that picture, and it shows above the door Lake George Union School. Next slide. In terms of logos, over 100 years, over 100 years of documented history, we have been using the LG, either interlocking or not interlocking, with the flame being added around the 50s and the lake logo widely used in the 50s and 60s, and then again from 2015 to present day. If you see that picture are the Lake George Lady Lakers from 1932 playing some basketball. The Lady Lakers. And in terms of mascot, the only known mascot that we could find in over 100 years history of our district was the Native American mascot starting in about the 50s and discontinuing wide usage around 2010. That picture shows the boys basketball team in, what does that say, Anna? 1930. And again, then they were the Lakers as well, the Lake George Lakers. And I heard they were a pretty darn good team. The boys and girls represented the Adirondack League very well.
So thank you so much. And one thing that I just want to comment on for Lake George is just the fact that we have all these resources to access our history. It's really impressive, the records that we have or the records in the community, because we did a lot of work on that really to identify our past. And the one thing I know is certainly that, the past history traditions are really important to this community. So thank you, Ms. Kokoza, for your efforts there and working on that. So, as we kind of get to the close here, what does this mean for Lake George? So certainly we intend to comply and recommend a resolution to be passed by the Board of Education. We're required to do that. That will be on the June 13th board agenda. The Warrior Head logo and mascot will continue to be retired. The nickname will be retired, and a process to choose a new nickname will occur. There is in the regulation, it states specifically that very clear language, existing trophies, plaques, and historical banners such as state championships will remain unchanged. However, there are some areas that do need to be addressed. One of the pieces that Mr. Koza spoke about is the Chuck Hawley painting. This is a piece of student artwork. It does need to come down, but we want to recognize the student and his dedication to our community. So we have a proposal in principle to donate it to the Lake George Historical Society, where it will be displayed, it will be honored and recognized. It will stay local, it will stay in Lake George, and anybody at any time can visit right across the street at the Historical Society. We do have some athletic banners that require annual updates. Those will be updated as well. They're not historical. They're added on to every single year. So we do need to make some adjustments on those. We have worked closely with Mr. Manny on the athletic uniforms. There is a replacement cycle that happens now currently. So we've been able to work with that replacement cycle to have minimal to no impact on budget. So that's a good thing. So we've worked really closely with him on that. And then the last piece is our high school gym floor. In the high school gym floor, there is the baseline says Warriors. So once we go through the process, which you'll learn about in the next few slides for a new nickname, we will need to address the gym floor. But again, the gym floor is resanded and refinished every 8 to 10 years. We're approaching that now, so it can tie nicely into our budget within the next year or two. We are required to have all of those things accomplished by June 30th, 2025. So we worked really closely with our student advisory committee in our last meeting. We spent the majority of the time talking about what do they want for proposed next steps here. They felt passionately, they spoke about this, that this should be a student-centered process. Students need to be at the forefront of this. And really one of the first things we talked about is getting in front of all the students in Lake George. So we approached this as 2 phases. So phase 1 consists of presentations to all students, staff, and community to really understand the regulation. We're doing that now. And then also to ensure all students, staff, and community know the history of Lake George mascots, nicknames, and logos. So this presentation is going to be given to really all of our stakeholders. We have as part of this presentation, there's a timeline on when we're presenting to students. We will be having a community forum. We're presenting right now. So we presented to staff members over the last week. And really the goal of that is to provide an opportunity for people to learn about our history, learn about the regulations, but also to provide feedback on choosing the path forward for the nickname. So after our presentations about the regulation history, the students, staff, and community will be surveyed on the path forward. So really in that moment, there'll be a QR code and they can put their phone up. We'll also send it out electronically after the fact, but there will be really a 1-question survey. And the goal of that 1-question survey is to determine really whether or not we should use one of our 2 Lake George historical nicknames that have already been in existence in our district, or do we want to choose a new nickname? And really we want the feedback from all of our stakeholders in that. So you learned about the 2 nicknames that we've had, Lakers, Georgians. So the question will be quite simple. It will be, after you've learned about this information, what do you think the path should be? Lakers, Georgians, or something new? So as part of that, we'll collect the survey results. The student advisory group and the district administration will review those results and determine next steps. If the survey results indicate consensus for using a historical nickname, then we're going to proceed with that nickname. If the results indicate consensus for choosing a new nickname, then we'll have a separate phase, which we're calling phase 2. So again, if the consensus is, hey, the direction from all the stakeholders, once we combine the data, is we want to go with a new nickname, then we're going to enter into phase 2, which phase 2 is basically we'll come back together with the student advisory group and determine criteria for choosing a new nickname. That includes guiding principles. We would actually create maybe 5, 6 guiding principles. We would work closely with our students in that. For example, one of the ones they already brought up to us is we really want to keep blue and white. Those are our school colors. I think everybody would understand that. So we would create some guiding principles along those, and develop those together and collaboratively. We would send that out. We would determine a timeline. We would do a community call for mascot names, nicknames, and ideas. So we would send out those guiding principles. We would ask all of our students and our staff and our community for any sort of ideas that they might have. We would then come back together. We would have a spreadsheet of all of them, and then we would narrow those choices. So our student advisory group would help narrow the choices down to 2 or 3, again, reflecting our guiding principles and our create values of our district. So they really have to match those. And then we would put out 2 final nicknames to our community, staff, students. We would go through the same process for a vote, and then that vote ultimately determines the new nickname. So that would be the process for the new nickname, if that is what comes out of the first survey. So this is our proposed timeline. So we've already met with all staff. So we had our high school, junior, senior high school staff meeting last week. And then we also had, today we met with the LGE, the elementary staff. We did the same presentation. Tonight, we're here at the Board of Education presenting on this plan. Next week, starting next week, May 17th, we're going to be doing an extended guide room with all 7th through 12th grade students. We'll have our student advisory group present, and we're going to be doing the same presentation along with that survey. On May 18th, the following day, we're going to meet with grades 4 through 6 with Mr. Conway. We're doing a very, very pared down, simplified version of this. Appropriate for our elementary students. And then we're going to have them participate in a voting process as well for that first phase. And then we'll have a community forum on May 23rd at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. We'll be doing a similar presentation. As part of that presentation, we'll share with the community what our students think and our staff. We'll have that data by then. So there'll be opportunity for our community to see what is our stakeholders of our students and our staff think at this point. They'll also have an opportunity to vote and be surveyed. And then we will take some time to, after that, we'll send out a parent square. So for those members of our families could not attend the community forum, they'll have an opportunity to review the presentation and vote through a parent square message. So we'll take some time to collect all that. On June 5th, we'll have our student advisory committee come together to review the survey results. We'll announce our results and next step. And then really by September 1st is our official launch of our new nickname. The last piece to that is one of the things we talked about with the students is that it's going to take some time to develop maybe an image that would reflect the new nickname. So that will take place in the fall. So one of the things we'll do is, and that will be another process that we'll work through. But essentially, we've already had one thing that's really nice. A lot of graphic design companies or that work with athletics, that work with districts are offering those graphic design services for free at no cost to schools that are impacted by this. So we also know that we have very talented artists in our school, and that was brought up as well. So we know this is going to be a collaborative process on designing a new image to reflect the new nickname. So that's our process here. I want to thank our student advisory members here. They did a wonderful job. And if the Board of Education has any questions for us, we will do our best to answer.
Go ahead, Trish.
Well, I want to congratulate you. You're part of a historic moment here at Lake George, and how cool that you are involved in this decision making. So thank you for being part of that. I'm curious, this is a topic that has come with a lot of controversy and contention. Are you finding lots of different opinions with your peers? And how have you worked through that?
I mean, I feel like this issue obviously hasn't just been brought about now. It's kind of been a topic of discussion for a while. So I think back to a few years ago, me and my friends were talking about it when there was just a lot of controversy surrounding the Native American logo. But I think being able to educate myself through this whole process and being able to look at those documents and hear about local tribes' opinions of this, as well as looking at those old yearbooks, has been really informative, but also being able to relay that information out to my peers. I think I've realized how misinformed some people are, and just being able to educate my friends and fellow classmates, I think that has been a really cool process and has brought a lot of like differing opinions together and just have made people like more open-minded and more willing to hear other sides out. So definitely that.
I definitely agree with Anna. I feel like through this process, we've been able to educate ourselves, and I'm really excited we'll be able to educate not only the high school students, but also the elementary students, because it is important to hear their opinion. Through the school, I felt like we've had mostly a consensus. Everyone understands that the name needs to change and the reasons behind that. So I'm kind of excited to see where everyone wants to go with this new name.
So last year in 6th grade, nobody really like talked about it because like it didn't really involve us because it wasn't mandated. So nobody like talked about like what our new nickname would be. But like when I came to the high school, it like became more of a talkative situation. And everyone like in math class, like I come back and everyone's like, what's our new nickname going to be? Like, how would I know? But like everyone's like saying we should be the Wolverines or we should be the Lakers, and it's like a whole big discussion. And it's like cool to see everyone's ideas and like what like they refer to other schools too. Like they're like Glens Falls is going to be the Black Bears. So it's just been like a big topic lately, and it's cool to hear everyone's ideas.
I just wanted to say to the students, particularly everybody though, thank you for taking the time to actually do the research and to get a grasp of the information. And then not just that, but to be ambassadors, because you really are being leaders and you're helping your community. I'm just really thrilled, and thank you for being so clear with your expressions. It's really refreshing, and I admire you.
Well said. Thank you, Marianne. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll just say that we're in good hands. That's for sure. And it's really your experience. You know, every adult in this room, we've had our high school experience and our connections to our alma maters, et cetera. But this really is about you, and you're off to a great start. So thank you.
I'm thrilled to have the student voices, and thank you for being here tonight to share what your whole group of students has been talking about. You've worked really hard and put in a lot of time for this, and I really appreciate that, and it's nice to have you here. Thank you.
Very impressive. Thank you very much. Both groups, the foreign language group and the group for the Native American imagery. Very impressive students. Thank you so much for coming here tonight and presenting to us. Really appreciate it.
It makes our meetings a lot more uplifting and exciting. Thanks for being here, students.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to excuse our students because they are so busy. And I know that they have got a lot going on and they've been taking their time to volunteer for all of this. So you guys are off the hook for the rest of the night. So thank you. Thank you so much.
So next,
yes,
next
I'm
on
gonna
our
stay. I'm gonna stay
agenda,
for another
yes, stay up there, right?
so-
For the hockey merger.
Yep. So as you've heard, as the board knows, we've been sharing information in regards to a possible ice hockey program and a merger with a local school district. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Manny here, but just I wanted to take the board through anytime we're considering a merger, there's a process. There's always a process for that. And there's even a longer process once that, the merger becomes an agreement in principle. So we take a lot of things into account when examining a possible merger. Certainly, first and foremost, student interest, sustainability, that's really critical. We do a lot of research looking at youth numbers, or even above, or even thinking about sustainability for our other programs as well. Because as we are faced with declining enrollment, we want to just be very conscious of that and how if there's any potential impact on our current athletic programs. So we do take a really deep dive and we do a lot of research and look at data in regards to that. Some of the other aspects that we take into consideration are logistics. Certainly that's a huge one. Impact on our transportation, human resources, certainly costs are part of this as well. And but one of the bigger ones is really looking for always ways to provide additional opportunities for students. We feel passionately, our district provides tremendous opportunities for our students. And when we look through the lens of a merger, we're looking at that piece. Can we provide additional opportunities for our student population? And that's really important. So those are all the different things that we weigh and we look at. And in this decision here, in this presentation here, those are things that we've weighed very, very closely. And we feel what we're presenting to you is a great opportunity for our students, and especially our hockey students that are participating in hockey a lot right now, but are members of our school district. So at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Manny here to share kind of the details and really kind of the next steps.
Fantastic. So as Mr. Luthringer said, over the past, dating back to last year, we've had some internal conversations and meetings. We've had some parent meetings and a lot of conversations and dialogue around this process and looking into the possibility of this merger. One of the first pieces you do when you look at a merger, as we've talked about with our other mergers, is you draw a circle around yourself. It has to be something that geographically makes sense. So in looking at hockey, there's really two options. The first is the Adirondack Rivermen, which is a merger that already exists with the schools of Glens Falls, Hudson Falls, South Glens Falls, Corinth, and Warrensburg. And then the other school that has a hockey program in our area is Queensbury. We had some internal conversations about both of those programs and some conversations with both of those entities about their setups, about the type of programs that they run, and really if they would entertain a conversation with us about a possible merger. Wow, I hit the wrong button. I turned it all the way off. Don't hit the bottom button. There we go. So at this point, as Mr. Luthringer said, we have had a meeting with the officials over to Queensbury, and we have an agreement in principle regarding a hockey merger for next year. The team name would be Queensbury Lake George Hockey. The uniforms that the team would wear would be the current stock of the Queensbury Spartan hockey uniforms that they have. And the coaching staff would remain the same with Queensbury's head coach, Dean Williams, and his staff running the program. Queensbury has a full-time athletic trainer that covers their sports teams, in particular hockey program, which would provide coverage to our team. And we as the district would not at this time be providing a coach, as there isn't a need from our end to do that. One of the other pieces that we look at, as Mr. Luthringer said, is transportation, and that is something that we're looking at, obviously as a district, but also athletically, and that is one of the big areas as we need to be able to transport our student athletes. One of the things with the merger that we were able to work out and made clear in this agreement is Queensbury would be providing the transportation to all of the contests. They actually house all the equipment out of the Glens Falls Rec Center. They have a locker room there. So the student athletes on a game day for an away game, they get there, they get all their gear out of the rec center, and they get onto a Queensbury bus and are transported to the contest. So our student athletes that would participate in this would be transported on the Queensbury bus. For practices, it would be incumbent on the players and the parents to transport to and from the practice site, which predominantly is the Queensbury Rec Center. Sometimes they do get some ice time at the Cool Insurance Arena. We are looking at some ways to assist with transportation, but we really felt that this time we cannot, as a district, guarantee any transport to our families for this merger based on our current availability and needs of our current programs that we have. So that was something that we made clear to our parents, that if this does go forward, the transport for practices would be incumbent on them. One of the other pieces that came up as we evaluated this is there's also a girls hockey merger in our area. It's called the Adirondack United. It includes the schools listed here, which is Glens Falls, Hudson Falls, South Glens Falls, Saratoga, Corinth, and Warrensburg. We've had some conversations with the Adirondack United. The host school is South Glens Falls. And when they formed this merger, they were looking for sustainability. So they did some deep research into all of the girls that are playing youth hockey in our area. Our school district and some other school districts that aren't mentioned here came up in that conversation. Our participation in girls hockey is at the elementary level. We have quite a number of students, but none of them at the time they were looking at this merger were high school eligible. So we were not invited into the initial piece to this. And at this time, they're not looking to expand that merger. However, we said as the merger goes on and as conversations about expansion do happen, we would like to be included. And their goal is to hopefully have 2 girls teams within Section 2. This is currently the only team. So if they were able to get a second team, it would probably be one of the schools in this current merger or a couple kind of pairing off and creating 2 merged teams. And at that time, we may be considered. So again, the process in the fall and the winter, we've been having those internal review and discussions. In April, we had a meeting with the Queensbury administration and their hockey coach to discuss the details, and we've come to an agreement in principle. We met Mr. Lutheringer and I last week with the hockey players and parents to share where we're at in our process and the information, do a Q&A session, presenting here tonight. And then we will be putting together paperwork in a merger process. Your league has to review all the mergers. So that would occur at the Adirondack League June 1st meeting. And then we would be looking for the board in June at the June meeting to take official action as a resolution for the potential merger. And then that would go to the section for review, and the winter mergers get reviewed on August 1st. They may have just changed that date to September 1st for the winter deadline. Queensbury's following a similar process. They had a parent meeting. They're presenting at their board meeting this week, and then they would be looking to have a similar resolution in league review, just as we would.
Go ahead. No.
Kyle, I was just wondering, the students that are playing, so from what I understand, they're students who have been playing hockey already. So what would our students have done without this merger? Would they have had to have ended their hockey careers because there were no other options as they got older, or?
Correct. So the students that are currently playing are playing in the AYHA, the Adirondack Youth Hockey Organization.
Okay.
That goes only up until a certain age, just before high school. Usually about, I think, freshman year is the oldest they can play in kind of that youth level. So if they're interested in playing hockey as a high school student, there currently is not an option for them if they're a student here at Lake George.
Is Queensbury in the girls Adirondack United?
Yes.
And so you said that we do have girls who are interested in playing ice hockey.
So we have, looking at the youth numbers, because obviously as we did this, we looked at the boys and girls, and when the Adirondack United for Girls was formed, they looked at all the schools. And we do have a number of Lake George students, female students that play hockey. However, the majority of them are at the elementary grade levels at this point. So when they looked at, hey, who would help us to form a team right now? We didn't have any high school eligible players. We do, I think one of them now is maybe a 7th or 8th grader. So we have some coming, and some parents have reached out saying, hey, can we look into this? And we've had those initial conversations, but this time the Adirondack United is not looking to expand. And we, at this point, currently don't have a lot of high school eligible players that would help in that merger. So.
Would there be any, I know we have boys wrestling, and if a girl wants to go on that, because we don't have a girls team, we allow that. Are there any policy mismatches that would disallow that with this merger?
So there is mixed competition, is what you're talking about. So if a school doesn't offer a sport for that gender, that we can go through that process. I'd have to look into that because it's a little complicated with, we don't offer it, but if Queensbury does, and it's not a merger. So I don't want to misspeak on that. It might get a little complicated, but I would think because we don't offer it, we could do mixed competition, but I'd have to double check on that.
Is there any other?
I just want to clarify, the Queensbury girls play on the United team, or they have their own team?
So the Adirondack United team is a merged team. It includes all these districts. So it's Glens Falls, Hudson Falls, Saucons Falls, Saratoga, Corinth, and Warrensburg. And Queensbury's on there. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Oh, okay.
Queensbury is
I just
part of
wanted to
that.
clarify that.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for all your hard work with all these mergers that help our kids immensely. So it really is, doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you for all your work on that.
Okay.
With Queensbury coaches, Queensbury uniforms, Queensbury transportation, how is the cost calculated that Lake George has to provide to Queensbury? Is it per student or a percentage of our players on their team? Is it too early for that?
No, we've had conceptual discussion about that. So obviously it's a relationship,
Right.
and we were involved in a lot of different mergers. So it's sort of, there are times where I'll just think about football for a second. Our transportation, we might help out and they might help us out back. In this regard, because of the proximity, Queensbury said very clearly, we will take care of all transportation. And we were asking for a nominal cost, a nominal fee, which we put into the athletic budget already. So it's a couple $1,000s for all the transportation needs. That includes every meet, every athletic contest, sectional states, all of that. So all of our families just need to get to the bus, which is at the rec center. But they're going to cover the cost for that. There's part of that budget included some support with potential supplies like tape, things like that. They weren't really interested in that. They have plenty of supplies and tape. And with hockey, it's a little bit different too, because the kids tend to have a lot of those things just naturally in their bags. But Queensbury has been very supportive of this. We've just been asked to contribute for some really small amount of transportation costs.
Great, thank you.
Just curious, how many kids are we talking about?
So look for next year, really about 4 kids. We'd have about 4 freshmen, 4 high school eligible kids. And then behind that, we've got 2 or 3 coming, some 7th grader, 6th grader, and then another 2 or 3. So that was one of the things that I think really worked in our favor and that Queensbury liked is, as we said, there's some sustainability there. But also we're not at the point where we're going to have too many kids where we're taking away any opportunity from Queensbury. So it really was kind of a really good fit in terms of their enrollment's going down. They're getting a little smaller. They're seeing a little bit of a dip in their hockey numbers. They got a little bit of room and we got a little bit of kids. And it worked out where the Rivermen they're saturated. They have too many kids as part of the merger that they're having right now. So kind of worked out. So yes, about 4 high school eligible, and then as they age up, because it's only it's a varsity JV, so it's 9 through 12. So our 7th and 8th graders wouldn't be eligible for it unless they were that elite player that goes through our classification process.
Okay, so
Yep.
just enough to not
Just
mess up
enough.
basketball and to not.
Just enough, and then
Okay.
yep,
All
and
right.
a couple each
Keep going.
grade level. Yes.
All right, great.
And I really want to thank you for your work on this partnership. It's another great example for Lake George's small school environment with big school opportunities. And we are, as declining enrollment happens all around us, these partnerships and mergers are really important. So thank you for your work on this. Really appreciate it.
Welcome.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody.
great.
Next up, we have the elementary update with Mr. Jim Conway.
A lot of great reports to follow. I will note that most of those girls presenting were former Lighthouse team members, so proud of that. And they can talk and they can lead, and excited about that. I did want to mention one of the things that Mr. Luthringer and I are continuing to foster is our relationship with Caldwell's preschool, and we will be hosting them for the second preschool story hour this week. 16 4-year-old students coming and joining a classroom at LGS for story time, an activity, a little snack. Then they go into the library, meet with Mrs. Crossman, who does some activities in the library, including teaching the students about the 1,000 Book Club. So this will be our second one. The one with our 3-year-olds went really well. It was exciting. So I wanted to share that with you, that, again, it's a great connection. We've had a nice relationship over the course of time, and our kids that go to that preschool program are certainly well prepared when they get to LGS. Just 2 other items. One, obviously, on the budget vote night, that we host our annual art show and open house. It is such a well-attended event. Our kids look forward to bringing their parents into the classroom and sharing some of the good things they've been doing throughout the school year, and seeing the artwork hanging on the walls of the building is great. Randy's Run. Mr. Kokoza and I have shared in the past that this event is a wonderful event celebrating 2 former district employees who both worked at the elementary school, Randy Madison and Ed Murphy. Randy's Run, Murphy's Mile, Saturday on the 20th at 8:30 a.m. is the start of Murphy's Mile, and then the 5K Randy's Run is at 9:15. I'll be brief because we've got a lot tonight, but over the past year, the elementary school has been very much involved in a renewal process with our math program, and we've given you updates, and I know that Mr. Luthringer has kept you apprised of what that process has looked like. You get to the point with a program where despite things are going great, and that our math scores are among the top in the Capital District, I'm proud of that. But we get to a point where all of a sudden a contract that you have with a company and with that program, they will have a revision to their program. And as a building and as a school, you need to make some decisions. What makes sense for our students? Our staff has been very much involved in that process, working along with myself and Megan Coker and certainly Ashley Gershon, who's done a tremendous amount of work overseeing that process. And Ashley's going to come up and just share where we're at and where we landed as a school. So Ashley, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you I haven't been able to personally speak with, as Mr. Conway said, my name is Ashley. I'm acting as the curriculum coordinator this year at the elementary school. So through this process that I can't believe started all the way back in October at this point, we were able to collaborate with Wichita BOCES, specifically Kelly Shepard, who works under the title of lead coordinator for professional learning. So part of the services that they offer is they go into school districts that are looking to do program reviews, and they offer a streamlined approach for that. So Kelly was able to offer us her time and services in which we used a rubric to assess programs that we thought would be a good match for the elementary school K-6 students. So as part of developing that rubric, one of the processes was to have Lake George teachers establish non-negotiables for our specific student clientele at Lake George and what would be the most important for our instruction moving forward. So the process started with Kelly coming to the school. All teachers were able to come together, K-6, and go through a brainstorming process to determine non-negotiables that every teacher felt was important. During that time, they were then able to advocate for their non-negotiables that they wanted to be a part of the rubric. And then we went through a voting process, all teachers involved. So we narrowed down those non-negotiables to about 10 that were added to the rubric. From there, we formed a small review committee that was comprised of one teacher for every grade level, K-6. It also included a special education teacher and a former acting AIS teacher that provided intervention for all of our students, K-6 in the building. So we were able to spend, that small review committee was able to spend 3 half days reviewing 3 different programs using that rubric to score and evaluate those programs. And then we spent 1 half day making our final decisions. So the programs, the vetted programs that we decided to review, 2 of which we had experience with. One was the acting program that we were using, Envisions, from the company Savas. So all K-6 teachers had experience with that program coming in. We also chose to review Eureka Math Squared, which is from the company Great Minds. With that program, that is a 3rd iteration of the New York State modules. So our 4th through 6th grade teachers were actually had taken on the New York State modules, and they were using that as their program for 6. So we wanted to review the newest edition of that. And then Mr. Conway had sent out a curriculum survey to the administrators across the region to see what other math programs were being used across the other regions and the districts in our area. And Into Math was one that stood out as something that was being highly used as well. So that was our 3rd program that we chose. We also cross-referenced that with Ed Reports to see if they were rated as meeting expectations, and they were. So that kind of gave us the green light to move forward with those 3 programs. So moving forward, we had our 3 programs. I reached out to the companies. I was either able to get samples from them and demo accounts. So when our small review committee came together, teachers had teacher editions, student materials. We had their access to the online platforms, resources and materials. So that was great for them. Unfortunately, when you're reviewing a program, especially a program in a half day, you can't look at a program in its entirety. So we referenced the suggested instructional timelines that New York State puts out. So when looking at math, we have domains that we are required to teach, and New York State says, okay, a percentage of your years should be spent on this domain, a percentage of your years should be spent on that domain. So we looked at the highest percentage domains and then teacher experience at those grade levels and chose a specific unit that we knew was heavily weighted for our students across the grade levels. And we looked at that one unit across all 3 programs, and that's what we used to evaluate on the rubric. So in addition to the rubric, teachers also made specific notes of haves and have-nots of those programs. So we would just have some evidence that didn't just necessarily relate to the rubric, but we were able to look across all 3 programs regarding our notes as well as for those haves and have-nots. We then took that information and sent it back to Kelly Shepard, where she was able to accumulate all of that data, and then she presented back to Jim, Megan, and myself with the findings from the scoring and evaluations of the rubrics. So that's where we came to Eureka Math Squared. So that will be the program that we plan to implement at the start of next school year. Again, as I said, it meets the expectations of Ed Reports. I did want to highlight some of the features that teachers noted as the haves of this program that really stood out. Some of the teachers noted that students would gain a deep understanding of concepts. We would be able to gather useful data to inform instruction and provide differentiation. There were very effective math strategies that scaffolded new concepts and moved students toward independence, and also provided the rigor that is needed for students to achieve at a high level. With that being said, no program is perfect. No program is going to meet all of our needs. So one of the things that we decided to take from those notations of the have-nots from this program was to bring that into our PD sessions this summer. And we will be having a live trainer come to the school to work with administrators, school leaders, and all the teachers K-6 that are able to attend. So we plan to bring those have-nots with us to gain a deeper understanding of maybe it was something we just didn't notice, and the trainer can actually give us insight that, yes, this program does have this, or we might need to think about little ways that we need to supplement some of those have-nots. So our next steps will be to order the materials ASAP so we can get those in teachers' hands for our summer training this summer. We're also working with the company to establish our summer dates. We have 2 in-person trainings. One, which is called LEAD, would involve the administrators and school leaders, myself and Brian Thompson, who's the curriculum leader for math, would attend that. And then we have a training called Launch, which would involve all K-6 teachers that were able to attend. And then we're hoping to plan one more day where teachers can then work in their teams to like kind of look at that first unit and kick off the year and be prepared and ready for that. Does anyone have any questions?
First of all, I really appreciate the explanation of the process. It sounds really solid, and it's really interesting too. The trainers that are coming in the summer, are they representatives from Eureka?
They are, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I had that same question. Thank you. Anybody else?
Did you say they're called life trainers?
In person.
Oh,
So
I
they will
see,
be
live.
coming live. Sorry. Yes.
I want a
They
live
are
trainer.
alive. They're alive and they will be
Right.
live. Yes. Yes. They will be in person with us. We just felt that that process was very important to have somebody there with us to kick off. And I just want to say thank you for your support with allowing us to choose a program and make this purchase to enhance our math instruction. We really appreciate it, and the professional development will be key moving forward. So thank you.
Well, as Mary Ann had said, the process, I mean, is so important. It sounds very thorough and collaborative, and I'm really appreciative of the work that everybody at the elementary school put in, and I know the extra time that you put in.
Thank
along
you.
with the
I appreciate it.
administration. Yeah, thank you. Are you done with your update?
I am not unless
Okay.
there's any questions. So hopefully you'll approve the purchase of this new math program. Because if not, I don't know what we're doing. I don't want to go back to the drawing board. Any questions? Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks.
Next, we have our secondary update with Mr. Frank Kokoza.
I'm going to yield my time back to the board because of the Native American mascot presentation, which is high school focused, the hockey presentation, which is high school focused. So we've taken enough time tonight's board meeting. Other than I just want to thank the community for their support with the prom. Over 30 area businesses and individuals donated to the success of the prom. Mrs. Rikiki and her efforts behind the scenes in making the post-prom and the prom just spectacular. Mrs. Becker with the prom and all the time and effort that she put into being the class advisor and bringing it together. And Mrs. Lanfear is with the post-prom advisorship, her first year doing it, and it was a success. Our students were incredible. I mean, the night was magical. It was the only day of the month of April that it didn't rain. And it was just a spectacular weekend for our students of Lake George High School.
Thank you, Mother Nature, and thank you, Mr. Kokoza. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you so much. I'll just be brief. I just want to echo that as well. It was my first opportunity to take part in the prom festivities, and coronation was just, to use Mr. Coe's word magical, I had not experienced a coronation of that magnitude, and obviously you cannot, the backdrop, you just can't. It was wonderful to be able to look out at the lake and just really see our kids all dressed up, and it was a great moment. So I really enjoyed that. I swung by prom for a little bit. Everything looked amazing, and really thanks to everybody that was mentioned. It was really a wonderful weekend. I also just would be remiss if at this time of year, it's quite busy. There's a lot going on. If you look at any of our calendars, there's a tremendous amount of things. Our school district calendar is full of a variety of activities. And I just want to mention we had a great staff recognition last week, and we had our PTSO provide a great lunch for our staff. And it coincides nicely with our Teacher Appreciation Week. And I just want to echo what the board said this morning or today to start the meeting. And just thank them. Our teachers do a tremendous job. They're dedicated, they're hardworking, and really at this time of year, you kind of need that. It's a busy time, it's challenging. And with the kids outside, it looks so beautiful. Sometimes our kids get a little squirrely, and that's that time of year. But for the most part, everybody's doing wonderful. We've had a great year, and it's been a great spring. And if you look at our events calendar, there's a variety of different opportunities to get involved, see our students in action. And I'm looking forward to, I'm looking at this list. There's just a giant list of activities coming up over the next several weeks. So really looking forward to that. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the Curriculum Committee report with Rosemary Earl.
I will be brief also, because we have a lot to discuss tonight. But I have listed for each of you on the board the presentation that the World Languages Department did for the Curriculum Committee, and also my notes that I took during that meeting. I don't really have to read them to you. I did attend the Seal of Biliteracy presentation by the 3 students who received that this year. It was absolutely impressive, incredible students. And, the World Languages Department took the 23 students across Spain and France, which is, a great feat and incredible for our kids. So we had, like Mr. Lutheringer said, we've had a busy spring, and the World Language Department is definitely part of that. So any questions on the notes that I took? Nope. That's it then. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Next, we have the Policy Committee report with Marianne McKenzie, who's chair of that committee.
Okay, so this evening, we have got 4 policies moving to second read. We discussed each of those at the April board meeting. There are 16 additional policies listed on the agenda tonight. Each one of those policies came before the policy committee by way of our internal Lake George policy manual review practice. And I think with the exception of one, the last date of review for each policy was pretty far back in 2013. So of those 16, 2 policies are being recommended to be retired. They are 5573, internal audit function, and 1339, duties of the internal auditor. And the rationale for this recommendation is that these policies are actually not relevant to Lake George, given that school districts with less than 1,500 students enrolled are exempt from having a designated internal auditor. And so while Lake George does have internal audit activities, we don't have an internal auditor, and these policies are just not applicable to us. 3 of the 16 policies were reviewed with no suggested changes to them, and those are pest management and pesticide use of federal funds for political expenditures, and publication of district's annual financial statement. So there are no recommended changes, but they've been reviewed. And the last one, their publication of district's annual financial statement, we did have some good conversation about some of the legal regulation language that we identified as being a little bit conflicting. One piece was a bit outdated and superseded by another piece of language, and that superseded the older one, but both pieces are still on the law books. And so we actually are expecting to try to have some communication with our National School Board, I'm sorry, New York State School Board Association to advocate to have that language resolved and in alignment with each other. There are 11 policies moving to first read tonight, and for the most part, the suggested revisions are very minor wordsmithing adjustments. The exceptions include 5571, allegations of fraud, and 5510, accounting of funds. And in both of those policies, the suggested revision is to remove references to the internal auditor as being not applicable for the reason I just stated. Also in policy 6214, incidental teaching, there's the revision that is suggested there is meant to reflect that the current guidelines for teacher appointment have been delegated by the Commissioner of Education to the district superintendent. So we updated that language, and that's the revision. We had our last policy committee meeting of the school year last Monday, and the minutes from that meeting are attached to the policy report tonight for your review. And in addition to the items already shared with you this evening, we also had a new policy referral on the topic of sun safety. And this referral came from the district level committee, the Health, Wellness, Nutrition, and Safety Committee. And what happened in that committee was that a representative for the Cancer Prevention and Action Group from Glens Falls Hospital recently addressed the Health, Wellness, Safety, Nutrition Committee to inform that there is a federally funded grant that is focused on sun safety and cancer education that school districts may have the opportunity to participate in. And school districts who do participate in this grant may receive items related to sun safety and cancer prevention. In order for a school district to participate in this program, the topic of sun safety needs to be addressed somewhere in district policy, whether in a standalone policy or within an existing policy. And so that's how the referral came to the policy committee. And we had a good discussion about this. And, you know, the opportunity itself highlighted really some, you know, we talked about the district need and benefits of having such a policy. And we talked about how the grant really illuminates, you know, the fact that skin cancers due to ultraviolet radiation from the sun is on the rise. We talked about, you know, the district's support for outdoor activities, and that, you know, we have students and adults alike who may spend extended periods of time outdoors. And so with that information, we found that general consensus that was sufficient enough for us to start taking a look at some policy language and samples, and you know, see if that's something that, you know, we can put together to serve the district. And so we'll be doing that over the course of the next month, just taking a look at language, and we'll keep you posted. That's the end of my report. Are there any questions? I want to make sure Mario has access to sunscreen. Kidding. Sorry. Sorry, Mario. Go ahead, Donna.
I have a quick question. So the internal auditing thing. So so we don't have to have a specific internal auditor because we don't have 1,500 students. But if we take out the whole internal audit function policy, what happens? Like if suddenly people start moving in, like the new apartment buildings are being developed, and suddenly we reach that, do we have to create a whole new policy? Like, what's the harm of just leaving it? Like, are we going to have to put one back in then later?
I'll try to answer this, but Lynn, you back me up if I have this right. So there are different categories of internal audit activities. And so there's claims auditor, internal audit functions, and the audit and finance committee. Those are 3 different categories, right? and the internal audit functions has a specific set of detail that exists in both of those policies. That's the one piece that we don't have, but we still have internal audit activities. Like we have a claims auditor, we have our audit and finance committee, and we also have other procedures that function in the vein of internal audit activity. And I don't know, Lynn, if you can add to that, but.
I think you did a very good job. And if that happens, if we get up to 1,500 students, which I don't know if we were ever at that level, I'll look at the historian, we could always reinstate a policy.
And in fact, for each year that we don't have that population, that gets reported to the Commissioner of Education every single year. So there's a check and balance always.
Thank you, Miriam. The next item on our agenda is the public comment period. And we have a sign-up sheet, which we have one person signed up. If for some reason you weren't aware of the sign-up sheet or have decided that you'd like to make a public comment, you certainly can after I call the first person. We have this sheet so that we have people's contact information so that we can get back to you in a timely manner. Before we begin our public comment, I just want to read a couple items around public comment. The Lake George Central School District Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, and other interested persons to its meetings. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that the board can better understand and represent the views of its constituents. Please be aware that by law, individual student information or particular personnel issues cannot be discussed in public sessions of the board. Please tell us your name when you come to the microphone. Statements are limited to 3 minutes. The board and district staff take public comment very seriously, and careful notes of questions and concerns will be taken so that they can be addressed as soon as possible. The first public comment period is for items that are on the agenda. If anyone is attending virtually and has a comment or a question, those can be sent by email to boe@lkgeorge.org, and the board members and the superintendent, Mr. Luthringer, will be able to view these emails after the meeting. Thank you in advance for helping to maintain a safe and respectful decorum for the meeting. So the first and only person signed up at this point is Courtney Rikiki. So welcome, Courtney.
Hello, my name is Courtney Rikiki. I live on Cotherman Drive, former board member. And you're right, Mario, that it is nerve-wracking being up here speaking. It's actually sometimes easier at the table. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but there were several things commented on that and presentations given that really stuck with me. The first one being the prom, and Superintendent Luthringer, you mentioned the backdrop. And many people are always resistant to change. I mean, I remember when I sat at the board table, many of you and we had very opposing views, but we always worked together. And one of the positive things that came out of COVID was that coronation ceremony. Always the coronations occurred in the gymnasium. And I remember that first year that we got back to being able to have a prom, and many of us, our children, it was their year, it was 2021. And the only real option to adhere to the guidelines was to use Shepherd's Park. And it turned out to be beautiful, and to the point where it was decided that's the future home of all the coronations. So had it not been for COVID, I don't know as if we would have ever ended up there. And it's, that's one of the things where when you're resistant to change and you're forced to make certain decisions and certain changes, and it can be something truly positive. So looking at the different presentations tonight, looking at the students who traveled over to Europe and got to explore different cultures, and they talked about they witnessed protests, and they got to learn and educate themselves about different foods, different beliefs, looking at the students who are on part of the committee and having to educate themselves and then be ambassadors to their fellow students, and and they talked about how enlightening it's been to them, and to just be able to learn and accept change, and how they can speak to each other and not argue. They can come from different perspectives and come up with a common answer. Maybe they're not all going to like it initially, but they're going to accept it and move on from that. And then the merger with the hockey program, all of those, what they mean to me, they address DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So despite the fact that we only have that 93% of our students are white in this district, I think all of those students who presented tonight really have listened and can teach us all and remind us that, we shouldn't be judged or based on the color of our skin, but really on the content of our character. And I think we need to look back at them, and all of us as adults need to be grateful and thankful that our district, our Board of Education, our administration are pursuing and encouraging curriculums and activities that support DEI, that go beyond whether you're white, black, purple, or red. It doesn't matter. So thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Is there anybody who didn't have an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak at this public comment period? We have another one at the end of the meeting as well. Thank you. So we'll move next to our school business consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda items A through H. And just brief summary, items A pertain to the minutes of our previous board meetings. Item B is recommendations from special education. Item C pertains to the policy that was spoke about from Mary Ann tonight. Item D is a motion to authorize the action for submission of an application for our Alpine merger that we've had in existence. Item E is a motion for the field trip request to SUNY Plattsburgh for Model OAS. Item F is in a motion to appoint Courtney Rikiki as the permanent chairperson of the annual meeting and the following inspectors to the roster of the Board of Registration for the annual meeting on May 16th, 2023. Chief Inspector of Elections, Rosalie Felino, Inspectors of Collections, Kathy Snelka, Barbara LaFond, Lucy Abrams, Nancy Quillinan, Jill Peterson, and Patricia Sinat. The reimbursement for the Board of Elections will be at $14.20. Item G is a motion to approve the purchase of a Eureka Math Squared textbooks as per the presentation you heard tonight. Item H is a motion to rescind the following policies effective immediately as they become obsolete and or incorporated into other policies as presented.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item B, action to accept the donation for the Blue Mock Grant Program.
As recommended by
Did I say that right?
I think you got it. As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the donation consent items A, which refers to a donation from to our fishing club from Lou's Mock Grant Program.
Do we have any questions? Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. The next category is faculty staff recognitions, and the tenure recommendations is next.
Before this recommendation, I just want to, I know the board is well familiar with our tenure process here, and our teachers that are up for tenure tonight have gone through a rigorous process. It's a 4-year tenure process where they have to do 4 years of evaluations of formal evaluations, informal, unannounced observations, creation of goals, constantly working on their practices. The teachers here tonight have all participated in our new induction teacher program, even as 4th-year teachers. They've participated. They're highly energetic, engaged with our curriculum, great members of our staff, and but they do go through a very rigorous process as well. So as we move forward here, as recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the following faculty staff recommendations for tenure and effective dates in their respective tenure areas. John Alecci, music teacher in the music education tenure area, effective September 1st, 2023. Jennifer DeLolio, guidance counselor in the guidance counseling tenure area, effective September 1st, 2023. And Carolyn Smith, English teacher in the English education tenure area, effective September 1st, 2023.
So moved.
Do we have any questions, discussion?
I just have a comment, is that in all my time on the board, I have not seen such a thorough and thoughtful tenure review with the board. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just want to say that presentation that we had when we talked about the tenure was impressive. Not the presentation, the teachers that are up for tenure, incredibly impressive what they bring to the table. Yes, yes.
All of it, all of it.
The package, the package.
The,
It's a nice power.
I thought we knew
I was, when I was thinking about Teacher Appreciation Week, I was thinking, seeing these three teachers are with us this evening. Thank you for being here tonight. And I was thinking about our teacher induction program with our brand new teachers and our teachers who have been here for a few years and our teachers who have been here for a really long time, and how fortunate we are to have that blending of, the younger, newer, fresh ideas with our seasoned and wise teachers who've been here for a while. Not that you don't have wisdom, but a different kind of wisdom that comes with many years. And I really, we truly, as I said, we feel blessed here. And so thanks for being here tonight, so that you can hear us with the vote. So do we have? So we already had our motion, our second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Now, we told them they can leave now, so.
We only got a couple more items.
Yeah,
But you can leave.
No, thank you. Thank you for our teachers in attendance. And we know you've got to get up early for our kids tomorrow. So please feel free to take off. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Next item is the faculty staff resignation and leave consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff consent appointments, items A through C. Item A is a motion to approve the unpaid leave of absence request for Audrey Van Vlack, English teacher, effective July 1st, 2023 through January 26, 2024. Item B is a motion to accept the resignation of Michael Grant from the position of bus driver, effective May 5th, 2023. And item C is a motion to approve the termination of Ryan Smith for the reason of abandonment from the position as cleaner, nights, effective April 11th, 2023.
Do we have a motion? Do we have any questions, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. The next item is faculty staff appointment consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff appointment consent agenda items A through H. In summary, a motion to appoint Chris Mondella to the position of teacher on assignment, CSE, CPSE, chairperson, K-12, and coordinator of 504, effective July 1st, 2023. Item B is a motion to appoint Anthony Malhero to the permanent position of full-time building maintenance mechanic cleaner in the non-competitive class of the civil service. Item C is a motion to appoint Lynn Allen to the permanent position of full-time bus driver. Item D, motion to appoint Ed LaFerriere to the permanent position of full-time bus driver. Item E is a motion to appoint Brandon Raymond to the probationary position of mechanic bus driver in the non-competitive class of the civil service. Item F is a motion to appoint Caitlin Schlinger to the long-term substitute English teacher position effective September 1st, 2023 through on or about January 26, 2024. Item G is a motion to appoint Alex Parrott as a per diem incarcerated youth and GED teacher. And item H is a motion to amend the 2022-23 substitute list of employees not hired through BOCES.
So moved.
Do you have any questions, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. And the next item is the unaffiliated staff terms and conditions.
As recommended by the superintendent, be resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the terms and conditions of employment for the following unaffiliated staff personnel as presented.
So moved.
Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is Board of Education comments and discussion. Anybody have any?
I've got something. I just wanted to bring up 2 points to the board that came to my mind based on some recent feedback directed to the board and about our board policy. What I heard from some community members was a fear of compromised safety regarding gender identity and gender identity policy. And when I attended the National School Board Conference, there was some information given to us that I'd like to go ahead and share with the board right now. It was cited that the UCLA School of Law finding was that laws allowing individuals to use public accommodations that correspond with their gender identity are not related to the number or frequency of criminal incidents in these spaces. And then that was an additional information point from the Harvard School of Public Health that transgender and non-binary students were even more likely to be the victims of sexual assault when restroom and locker room use was restricted. And that really struck me as, you know, looking at safety, looking at what the statistics are, what the evidence is showing us, and how important it is not to criminalize an identity, especially one that is already quite vulnerable and marginalized in our society today. And I have a second point too, that at first glance might contradict my first point, but it doesn't, so bear with me. Our own cultural norms and understanding are changing in such a way that I think we need to allow the evolution to happen, right? I learned a term recently called transculturation. It really is just the changing of our culture, and that's happening. Quite a bit of it revolves, especially in our media and our conversations and our culture about LGBTQ topics, and I talk about not criminalizing an identity, but I also really want to emphasize that we don't want to villainize those who are a part of this evolution and process and have different understandings, have different values, and have different fears maybe about what's happening in our society. And so I'm going to encourage the board to adopt my radical approach. I've decided that I have a radical approach. That is true, and I call it the radical middle. And that is a rejection of this polarization in the conversation and an invitation for folks to come together and learn from one another, find out what the evidence says, have some conversation, have some grace and some tolerance for the learning curve of those in our community, and truly live our student-centered learning environment where we want to make sure that everyone is important and welcome and valued here.
Thank you, Trish.
Wow. Can I go
Yeah.
next? No, that's really well said, Trish. And I'm so glad you said it, because one of the things that has been on my mind today about that public comment from last week was, you know, I give anybody credit for receiving information that makes them feel strongly concerned enough to come out of your home and come to a meeting and speak in front of a lot of people, that takes a lot of courage, I think. And Trish, I mean, I think you're right. There's a lot coming at us. Our world is changing fast. It's a lot to process and to manage. And in the school, we want to do our best to, we have to be able to navigate it ourselves, and we want to support students to be able to navigate. And yeah, I give people credit. I think that I heard fear in that public comment, and over the gender identity policy. Gender identity is actually a legally protected class under state and federal law. We have a really nice policy that I think the concern, as you said, Tricia, is that somebody's needs are being met at the expense of somebody else's. But I encourage anybody to take a look at this policy. It provides a very thoughtful and meaningful, organized framework for helping to meet the needs of a student who has needs related to gender identity, but not just that student. It's for all students. And if you look carefully, I mean, this policy is, I think, fairly brilliant because it acknowledges that one size doesn't fit all. And it creates the flexibility to create a plan that meets student need. And it's not just the one student who has the gender identity needs, but there is a list of just some of the many factors that are considered when a plan is made. And it includes the protection and privacy of all students. It talks about, socialization factors, your peer factors, the maturity factors. Anyway, I hope that, I understand why it may create some fear, but I hope that reading it actually might provide some comfort. And if it prompts questions, I encourage anybody to, if you want to know what this policies are written in really broad language. And if you want to know what it really looks like in action, I encourage, if you have questions, to give the superintendent's office a call and ask some questions. I think when anyway, I think that could be helpful. And yeah, I just wanted to say that. I really like that radical, middle. I like that. All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, well said by both of you. Thank you. And I'll just piggyback on what you said about, feeling free to contact, whether it be the superintendent's office or members of the Board of Education with questions or concerns. Again, we mentioned people who have fear or concern related to a policy, but there are also things in the community that come up that sometimes I don't know, make the hair on people's necks stand up where the situations are being described at our school district. And I encourage anyone in the community, if with any question at all, or questioning, is something taking place at the school that somebody else is talking about, please feel comfortable to contact. We've really tried to build an open door for communication, whether it's through the board or our superintendent, and every person gets contacted personally in order to talk things through. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, if I say something wrong, let me know, because I'm not specifically familiar word for word for the policy, but I'm just from touring the school as a new board member this year. It was made clear to me that the school really looks after each student individually. So not only are we concerned with the comfort of a student that may have a gender identity issue, but we're also concerned about students who may be uncomfortable with the other students who don't have, the students who are uncomfortable with the students who have gender identity issues, if that makes sense. So there are actually facilities, like no one ever has to be in a locker room.
where they're not comfortable. Like we actually have facilities in the school and separate changing areas if somebody's not comfortable with a different student in a locker room. So I just do feel like whether it's at the policy level or at the practical level, that the school district really goes out of their way to make sure that every single student is not put in a place where they're uncomfortable. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to mention that I just know in practice that any student who is uncomfortable can go to any teacher and express that, and they will be heard and steps will be taken to make sure that they feel safe. And so there we go.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else? I have a different topic. And John, you mentioned the PTSO in your comments, and Marianne and I had the opportunity to go to the PTSO meeting last week. And I just really want to thank the members of the PTSO for all that they do. They quietly work, these volunteers quietly work behind the scenes and do so much for all of the students in our district. And most recently, the staff appreciation luncheon that John mentioned, which is one of the many things that they do. So I just wanted to have a little shout out to the PTSO and the volunteers and all the work that they do to make it an extra special activities and opportunities for our students. So thank you to the PTSO. Anybody else have any other items? Okay. The next item on our agenda is our second public comment period. Okay, so there was no one on the list for our second public comment period. So we will move to, is there anybody who didn't sign up who wishes to make a comment? Okay, the next item on our agenda is the proposed executive session. As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education, no, sorry, you read that, right? Do I read that?
No, it's you.
Okay.
Yep, we have a executive session.
The Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby proposes entering into an executive session to discuss the employment history of particular employees.
So moved.
Any question, discussion?
Do we anticipate coming back out into public session?
We do not.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thanks again for being here tonight.
Thank you.